The stranger in my shower wasn't supposed to change everything, but she did. Ethan Cole thought he'd seen it all as a single father. Late night emergencies, unexpected tears, last minute school projects. But nothing prepared him for the sound of running water in an empty house. His daughter was miles away. The doors were locked. Yet someone was in his bathroom singing softly over the rush of the shower. Heart pounding, baseball bat in hand, he pushed open the door and found a woman who would turn his carefully ordered world completely upside down. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below and hit that like button. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The house on Maple Ridge Drive had always been Ethan's sanctuary. It wasn't much to look at from the outside, a modest two-story with faded blue shutters and a front porch that creaked in all the right places. But inside, it was his. Every corner held a memory, every room a carefully constructed routine. After the divorce, routines had become Ethan's religion. They kept him focused, kept him functional, kept him from dwelling too long on the empty spaces his ex-wife had left behind. Friday nights were the hardest. Those were the nights when his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, stayed with her mother across town. The custody arrangement was clean, predictable, just like everything else in Ethan's life had to be now. Every other weekend, he'd pack Lily's little pink backpack, watch her skip down the driveway to her mother's waiting car, and then return to a house that suddenly felt 3 sizes too large. This Friday had been no different. Ethan pulled his aging Honda into the driveway at exactly 9:47 p.m., 17 minutes later than usual because of a staff meeting that had dragged on far too long. He taught high school English at Riverside Academy, a job that paid enough to keep the mortgage current and Lily in decent sneakers. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. Stable mattered more than glamorous when you were raising a kid on your own. He grabbed his leather messenger bag from the passenger seat, a birthday gift from Lily last year, slightly lopsided because she'd helped wrap it herself, and headed toward the front door. The porch light was motion-activated, flooding the entrance with harsh yellow light as he approached. He made a mental note to replace the bulb with something warmer. Lily had complained it made the house look scary like in movies. The key turned smoothly in the lock. Ethan stepped inside, dropped his bag on the bench in the entryway, and loosened his tie. The house greeted him with its usual silence. The hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway, the settling sounds of an old house at rest. He was halfway through removing his shoes when he heard it. Water. Running water. Ethan froze, one shoe dangling from his hand. The sound was unmistakable, the steady rush of the shower running upstairs. His shower. In his bathroom, in his empty house. His mind raced through possibilities. Had he left it running this morning? Impossible. He'd been meticulous about checking everything before leaving for work, double-checking locks and appliances the way he always did. Had a pipe burst? No, this wasn't the chaotic spray of broken plumbing. This was intentional, controlled. Someone had turned on his shower. Someone was in his house. Ethan's heart began to hammer against his ribs. He set down his shoe with deliberate care, trying to keep his breathing steady. The baseball bat was in the hall closet, 3 steps to his left. He'd kept it there since the divorce, a silent security blanket he'd never actually expected to use. His hand closed around the bat's worn grip. The wood felt solid, real, grounding. Ethan began to climb the stairs, each step a careful negotiation with the old floorboards. He knew which ones creaked, 3rd from the bottom, 7th from the top, and he avoided them out of habit. His phone was in his pocket. He should call the police. That's what any reasonable person would do. But something stopped him. Maybe it was pride, some deep masculine instinct that insisted he should be able to handle an intruder in his own home. Maybe it was the teacher in him, trained to handle teenage drama with calm authority. Or maybe it was just the absurdity of it all. Who breaks into a house just to take a shower? The bathroom door was closed, a strip of light visible beneath it. Over the sound of running water, Ethan could hear something else. Humming. Someone was humming a tune he almost recognized, something pop and contemporary, completely at odds with the terror coursing through his veins. He raised the bat, positioned himself to the side of the door, and knocked. The humming stopped instantly. "Hello?" Ethan called out, trying to sound more confident than he felt. I don't know who you are, but I'm calling the police right now if you don't come out immediately. Silence. Then a voice, female, young, and absolutely panicked. Oh my God. Oh my God. Is this... A pause. What's the address of this house? The question was so unexpected that Ethan actually lowered the bat slightly. What? The address! More urgency now, the shower still running in the background. Please, what's the house number? It's 847 Maple Ridge Drive. Why the hell does that... Oh no, no. The voice cracked, genuine distress bleeding through. I'm at the wrong house. I'm so sorry. I thought Jenna said 847 Maple Street. I'm at the wrong house. Ethan stood frozen, bat still raised, trying to process this information. You broke into my house because you got the address wrong? I didn't break in. The door was unlocked and Jenna said to just come in and make myself at home, and I was running so late and I just... She made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. I'm so sorry. I can't believe this is happening. Despite everything, despite the adrenaline still flooding his system, Ethan felt the smallest flicker of something that might have been amusement. The door was locked. No, it definitely wasn't. I just turned the handle and... She paused. Wait, are you sure this is 847? I've lived here for 6 years. I'm sure. Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. The key. Jenna said she'd leave a key under the mat for me. I used the key. Does that help? I used a key, so it's not technically breaking and entering, right? Ethan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. There's been a spare key under my doormat for 3 years. I keep forgetting to bring it inside. So I accidentally used your spare key to accidentally enter your house to accidentally use your shower before the most important job interview of my life, which starts in 45 minutes, and I'm currently standing naked in a stranger's bathroom. Her voice rose with each word. This is actually happening. This is my life now. Despite himself, despite the absurdity and the fear and the complete violation of his personal space, Ethan felt the corner of his mouth twitch. Are you seriously taking a shower right now while we're having this conversation? I was covered in coffee. I spilled an entire venti caramel macchiato down my shirt in the car, and I thought I had time because Jenna said I could use her shower, and... She stopped abruptly. I'm turning off the water now. This is so unprofessional. I'm turning it off. The shower cut off, leaving a silence that somehow felt louder than the running water had been. Ethan leaned against the wall, bat lowering to his side. This was insane. This entire situation was completely insane. He should be calling the police. He should be angry, outraged, demanding answers. Instead, he found himself asking, what kind of job interview? Marketing coordinator at Riverside Tech. It's a new company, only 6 months old, but they're doing incredible things with sustainable technology integration. And if I don't get this job, I'll have to move back home to Nebraska, which would be admitting that my mother was right about everything, and I absolutely cannot let that happen. The words tumbled out in a rush, pressure releasing. I moved here 2 weeks ago. My friend Jenna said I could crash with her until I found a place. And she gave me her address. But I must have written it down wrong, and I've been driving around trying to find Maple Street for 20 minutes, and I finally found this house with 847 on the mailbox. And the key was there just like she said, and I didn't even think to... Breathe, Ethan interrupted. You need to breathe. She breathed. He could hear it through the door, deliberate and shaky. Okay, Ethan said slowly, his mind working through the situation with the same methodical approach he used for lesson planning. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to go downstairs and wait in the kitchen. There are clean towels in the cabinet next to the sink. You're going to get dressed, come downstairs, and we're going to figure this out like reasonable adults. Does that work? You're not calling the police? Ethan surprised himself by saying, not unless you give me a reason to. Thank you. Relief flooded her voice. Thank you so much. I swear I'm not a crazy person. I'm just having the worst day of my entire life, and... Kitchen, Ethan repeated. 5 minutes. He descended the stairs on autopilot, his mind struggling to catch up with reality. This wasn't how Friday nights were supposed to go. Friday nights were supposed to be quiet. Maybe a beer, maybe a documentary, Definitely not random women accidentally breaking into his house for emergency showers. In the kitchen, Ethan set the bat on the counter and filled a glass with water. His hands, he noticed, were shaking slightly. Adrenaline withdrawal. He drank the water in 3 long gulps, then filled another glass for his unexpected guest. Above him, he could hear movement. Footsteps, the creak of floorboards, the quiet sounds of someone getting dressed. He tried not to think about the fact that a strange woman had been naked in his bathroom. That felt like a detail his brain wasn't ready to process yet. The kitchen clock ticked forward, 10:04 p.m. Ethan found himself straightening things that didn't need straightening, adjusting the fruit bowl on the counter, aligning the coffee maker with the edge of the tile, wiping down a surface that was already clean. Nervous energy had to go somewhere. Footsteps on the stairs. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, and Ethan got his first real look at his accidental intruder. She was younger than he'd expected, mid-20s maybe, with dark hair pulled back in a wet ponytail. She wore jeans and a wrinkled button-down shirt that was definitely worse for wear, probably the coffee-stained outfit she'd mentioned. Her face was makeup-free, skin still flushed from the hot shower, and her eyes, wide, brown, genuinely mortified, met his with an expression of such complete embarrassment that Ethan felt his defensive anger evaporate completely. "Hi," she said quietly. "I'm Mara Lane. And I'm so sorry." Ethan gestured to one of the kitchen chairs. "Sit, please." She sat, perching on the edge of the chair like she might need to bolt at any moment. Her eyes darted around the kitchen, taking in the crayon drawings stuck to the refrigerator with magnets, the stack of graded papers on the counter, the child-sized sneakers by the back door. "You have a kid," she observed, and something in her voice shifted. Warmer, more human. "A daughter. Lily. She's 8. Ethan slid the water glass across the table to her. "She's with her mother this weekend." Mara took the glass gratefully, drinking like someone who'd been lost in the desert. When she set it down, she said, "I really thought this was Jenna's place. I have the text right here." She pulled out her phone, fingers trembling slightly as she scrolled. "See? 847 Maple. She must have meant Maple Street, but she just wrote Maple, and when I saw Maple Ridge Drive on the GPS, I just assumed, it's an easy mistake," Ethan found himself saying, even though part of him couldn't believe he was being this calm about the situation. "No, it's not. It's completely inexcusable." Mara set her phone down and looked at him directly. "I violated your privacy. I invaded your home. You would be completely justified in calling the police, and honestly, I wouldn't blame you if you did." Ethan studied her for a long moment. She met his gaze steadily, not looking away, not making excuses despite the explanation she'd already given. There was something refreshing about that kind of directness, especially after years of his ex-wife's tendency to deflect and redirect blame. "Tell me about the job," he said instead. Mara blinked. "What?" "The interview. The one you've got in—" He checked the clock. 38 minutes. "Tell me about it." She stared at him like he'd just spoken in a foreign language. Then slowly, something in her shoulders relaxed. Riverside Tech is pioneering this new approach to sustainable energy integration in commercial buildings. They're looking for someone to handle their marketing and public outreach, someone who can translate complex technical information into compelling narratives that investors and the public can understand. "And that's you?" "I think it could be." Her eyes lit up when she talked about it, the embarrassment temporarily forgotten. "I have a background in environmental science and communications. I spent the last 3 years working for a nonprofit in Chicago, but I wanted to move into the private sector, somewhere I could see my work have more immediate, measurable impact. Riverside Tech is exactly that opportunity." "But you're covered in coffee." Mara's shoulders sagged. "Yeah, I stopped for caffeine on the way to Jenna's, and I hit a pothole, and—" She gestured helplessly at her stained shirt. "This was my interview outfit. I have a backup blazer in the car, but this shirt is ruined, and I don't have time to go shopping, and showing up to an interview smelling like a coffee shop seems like a really bad first impression." Ethan found himself doing mental calculations he couldn't quite explain. This woman had accidentally invaded his home, used his shower, and disrupted his carefully planned quiet evening. The reasonable response would be to politely but firmly ask her to leave. Instead, he heard himself say, What size do you wear? I'm sorry? Shirt size. What size? Medium? Sometimes small, depending on the cut. Why? Ethan stood up. Wait here. He left her sitting in the kitchen, climbed the stairs for the third time that evening, and went to his bedroom. The closet still held some of his ex-wife's things, items she'd never bothered to collect, pieces she'd deemed not worth the effort of a second trip. He'd been meaning to donate them for months, but inertia and a vague sense that he should check with her first had kept them hanging there. Near the back, still in dry cleaner plastic, was a silk blouse in deep navy blue. Professional, understated, the kind of thing someone might wear to an important interview. His ex-wife had bought it for a job she'd never ended up taking, a path not chosen in favor of a different opportunity. Ethan grabbed the blouse and headed back downstairs. Mara was exactly where he'd left her, sitting in the kitchen like a visitor in a museum, afraid to touch anything. She looked up when he entered, eyes widening when she saw what he was carrying. "This should fit," he said, holding out the blouse. "It's new, never been worn. Professional enough for a tech company interview, I think." Mara stared at the offered garment like it might bite her. "I can't accept that." "Why not?" "Because you don't know me. Because I broke into your house. Because this is already the strangest, most mortifying night of my life. And accepting clothing from you would somehow make it even weirder." Ethan set the blouse on the table between them. "Here's what I know. You made an honest mistake. You were desperate and stressed, and you did something slightly reckless based on incomplete information. But you owned it immediately. You didn't lie. You didn't try to sneak out. You didn't make excuses. That tells me something about your character." He paused. "And I know what it's like to need a second chance when everything feels like it's falling apart." Something in Mara's expression shifted, the mortification giving way to something softer, more vulnerable. "You're sure? The interview is in half an hour. You don't have time to find an alternative." He pushed the blouse closer to her. "There's a bathroom down here if you want to change. Take it." Mara picked up the blouse with careful hands, fingers running over the silk like it was something precious. "I don't know how to thank you." "Ace the interview. That'll be thanks enough." She stood, cradling the blouse against her chest, and looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Why are you being so nice to me?" Ethan considered the question. Why was he? The reasonable answer involved practicality and empathy, the recognition of an honest mistake and a desire not to ruin someone's life over a misunderstanding. But beneath that was something else, something he couldn't quite name, a spark of interest maybe, or curiosity about this woman who'd tumbled into his orderly life like a comet disrupting planetary orbits. "Because everyone deserves a chance to clean up their messes," he finally said. "Now go change. You're running out of time." The downstairs bathroom door closed, and Ethan found himself alone in his kitchen again. He should have felt unsettled, off balance, disturbed by the intrusion into his personal space. Instead, he felt awake, more present in the moment than he'd been in months. When Mara emerged 5 minutes later, the transformation was startling. The coffee-stained casualness had been replaced by polished professionalism. The navy blouse fit perfectly, complementing her complexion and making her look both competent and approachable. She'd done something with her still damp hair, pulling it back in a way that looked intentional rather than rushed. Even without makeup, she radiated a kind of determined confidence. "How do I look?" she asked, and there was something almost shy in the question. "Like someone who's about to nail an interview," Ethan replied honestly. Mara smiled, a real smile this time, not the nervous grimace she'd been wearing earlier. "I should go. I need to actually find Jenna's house and drop off my things. And then I need to get to Riverside Tech, and—" She stopped herself, taking a breath. "I'm rambling again." "It's fine." She moved toward the front door, then paused in the entryway. Turning back, she looked at Ethan with an expression of such genuine gratitude that he felt something shift in his chest. "Thank you," she said simply. "Not just for the shirt, for not calling the cops, for being kind when you had every right to be angry. I won't forget this." "Good luck," Ethan replied. And then she was gone, the front door closing softly behind her, her footsteps quick on the porch steps. Through the window, he watched her hurry to a beat-up sedan parked at the curb, slip inside, and drive away into the night. The house settled back into silence. Ethan stood in his entryway, the baseball bat still on the kitchen counter where he'd left it, and tried to process what had just happened. In the space of 30 minutes, his quiet Friday night had transformed into something else entirely. A strange, disorienting encounter that defied every expectation he'd had for how the evening would unfold. He should feel violated. Instead, he felt curious. The grandfather clock chimed the half hour. 10:30 p.m. Ethan returned to the kitchen and noticed something on the table. Mara's phone, left behind in her rush to leave. He picked it up, the screen lighting at his touch. The background was a photo of a sunset over water, beautiful and melancholy. She'd need this. The lock screen showed a recent text thread. Against his better judgment, Ethan glanced at it, just enough to confirm it was the conversation with Jenna, with that abbreviated address that had caused all this confusion. There, near the bottom, was a phone number for Jenna Chen. Ethan pulled out his own phone and dialed. A woman answered on the third ring, sounding harried. "Mara? Did you find the place? I'm so sorry I couldn't be there to let you in. This client emergency is—" "This isn't Mara," Ethan interrupted. "My name is Ethan Cole. I live at 847 Maple Ridge Drive. Your friend is currently on her way to a job interview, and she accidentally left her phone at my house." Silence. Then, "I'm sorry, what?" Ethan explained the situation, abbreviated version, hitting the key points without dwelling on the more surreal details. To her credit, Jenna listened without interrupting, though he could hear her sharp intake of breath at several points in the story. "Oh my God," Jenna said when he finished. I can't believe. She okay? Are you okay? Did you call the police?" "Everyone's fine, no police. She was very apologetic." Ethan looked down at the phone in his hand. "She's going to need this, though. For the interview, or at least afterward. What's the actual address of your place?" 847 Maple Street, apartment 3B. It's about 2 miles from where you are." Jenna paused. "You said she has an interview at Riverside Tech?" "In about 25 minutes, according to her timeline." "She's not going to make it back here first. Even if she drives straight there, she's cutting it close." Jenna's voice shifted, taking on a determined edge. "Can you do me a huge favor? Can you meet her there and give her the phone? I'd do it myself, but I'm stuck in this meeting for at least another hour, and Mara's going to panic when she realizes she left it behind." Ethan opened his mouth to say no. This wasn't his problem. He'd already gone above and beyond for a complete stranger. He'd given her his shower, his ex-wife's blouse, his understanding, and patience. Driving across town to deliver a forgotten phone was several steps past reasonable kindness into territory he had no business entering. But he thought about Mara's expression when she'd thanked him. That raw, honest gratitude. He thought about the way her eyes had lit up when she talked about the job, about second chances and starting over. He thought about how it felt to need just one thing to go right when everything else was going wrong. "Text me the address for Riverside Tech," Ethan heard himself say. "I'll meet her there." After he hung up, Ethan stood in his kitchen, holding 2 phones and wondering what exactly he'd just agreed to. This was madness. This was the opposite of the quiet, controlled existence he'd so carefully constructed. But as he grabbed his keys and headed out into the night, he couldn't deny the small thrill of anticipation humming beneath his skin. Riverside Tech occupied a sleek, modern building in the newer part of town, all glass and steel and ambitious architecture. Ethan pulled into the visitor parking lot at 10:52 p.m., 8 minutes before Mara's interview was scheduled to start. He spotted her immediately. She stood near the building's entrance, silhouetted by the bright lobby lights, and even from a distance he could see the frantic way she was patting down her pockets, checking her purse, the growing panic in her movements, looking for her phone. Ethan got out of his car, Mara's phone held up like a white flag. "Missing something?" She spun around, eyes wide. What are you? "You left this on my kitchen table. I called your friend Jenna. She asked me to bring it to you." He held out the phone. "Thought you might need it." Mara took the phone with trembling hands, and for a moment Ethan thought she might actually cry. Instead, she laughed, a slightly hysterical sound that seemed to release all the tension she'd been holding. "You drove all the way here to give me my phone." It seemed important. Important doesn't even begin to cover it. She clutched the phone to her chest. I thought I'd lost it. I thought I'd have to go into this interview completely disconnected, unable to follow up, unable to... She stopped herself. You didn't have to do this. I know. They stood there in the parking lot, lit by sodium lights and the glow from the building behind them. Mara looked at him with an expression that was part confusion, part wonder, like she was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't quite make sense. Why? She asked softly. Why are you helping me? Ethan didn't have a good answer for that. Not one that made logical sense anyway, so he said the only true thing he could think of. Because I think you're going to do great in there, and I wanted to make sure you had every advantage. Mara's smile was brilliant, transforming her whole face. Thank you for everything. For the shower, the shirt, the phone, She gestured helplessly. The basic human kindness that I absolutely did not deserve but desperately needed. Good luck in there. Wait. She pulled out her phone, fingers flying over the screen. Give me your number, please. I want to return the blouse after I get it cleaned, and I want to thank you properly when I'm not in the middle of a complete meltdown. Ethan hesitated for only a moment before reciting his number. She typed it in, then sent a quick text. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A simple message. This is Mara, the girl who accidentally invaded your life. Thank you for not hating me. Now you have mine too, she said, in case you ever need someone to accidentally break into your house again. He laughed. Actually laughed, the sound surprising him. I'll keep that in mind. Mara glanced at the building behind her, then back at Ethan. I should go. I need to mentally prepare to convince these people that I'm a functional adult, despite all evidence to the contrary tonight. You'll do great, Ethan said, and he meant it. She walked backward for a few steps, as if reluctant to turn away, then gave a small wave before disappearing through the glass doors into the bright lobby beyond. Ethan stood there for a moment longer, watching through the windows as she approached the reception desk, as she straightened her shoulders and became the professional, competent person he'd glimpsed when she'd emerged from his bathroom in that navy blouse. Then he got back in his car and drove home, the quiet house waiting for him like it always did. But something had changed. The silence felt different now, less heavy, more expectant, as if the space itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Ethan picked up the baseball bat from the kitchen counter and returned it to the hall closet. He didn't think he'd be needing it again anytime soon. Then he made himself a late dinner, checked his email, and tried to focus on grading the stack of essays waiting for his attention. His phone sat on the table beside him, silent but somehow significant. It wasn't until nearly midnight that it buzzed with a new message. I got the job. They offered it to me on the spot. I start Monday. I don't know how to thank you for tonight, but I'm going to try. Coffee? My treat. Let me know when you're free. Ethan read the message 3 times, a smile pulling at his lips. Congratulations, he typed back. You earned it. Coffee sounds good. Thursday afternoon? The response came almost immediately. Thursday is perfect. I promise not to break into your house this time. Appreciate that, Ethan replied. He set the phone down and returned to his grading, but the words on the page kept blurring. His mind was elsewhere, caught on a strange, unexpected night that had started with fear and ended with possibility. Outside, the autumn wind picked up, rattling the windows and sending leaves skittering across the driveway. The house creaked and settled around him, familiar sounds in familiar rooms. But Ethan Cole, single father and high school English teacher, felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. He felt curious about tomorrow. And for a man who'd spent the last 2 years living in carefully controlled routine, that curiosity felt like the beginning of something he couldn't quite name yet, something that started with a wrong address and a stranger in his shower, and might lead somewhere neither of them had planned to go. The grandfather clock chimed midnight, marking the end of one day and the beginning of another. Ethan smiled and got back to work. Thursday arrived with the kind of crisp autumn sunshine that made everything look sharper, more vivid. Ethan found himself checking his watch more often than usual during his afternoon classes, watching the minutes tick toward 3 o'clock when his last period would end. He'd chosen the cafe carefully, a quiet place called The Borrowed Cup, tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing shop on the east side of town. Neutral territory, public enough to feel safe, but intimate enough for real conversation. He told himself this was just coffee, just a simple thank you between two people who'd shared a bizarre experience. Nothing more complicated than that. But he'd also changed his shirt twice that morning before leaving for work. The cafe smelled like espresso and cinnamon when Ethan walked in at 4:15. Mara was already there, seated at a corner table with 2 cups in front of her. She stood when she saw him, and the smile that crossed her face was genuine, warm, lacking the panic that had defined their first encounter. "I ordered for you," she said as he approached. "Black coffee, no sugar. I hope that's right. You seem like a black coffee person." Ethan sat down, oddly pleased that she'd guessed correctly. "Good instinct. I'm trying to demonstrate that I'm observant and thoughtful, qualities that might offset the whole breaking and entering thing." She pushed one of the cups toward him. "How was your day? Did you teach impressionable young minds about the beauty of literature?" "Tried to. Mostly I refereed arguments about whether Shakespeare is relevant to modern life." He took a sip of coffee. It was good, strong without being bitter. "How's the new job?" Mara's eyes lit up the same way they had when she'd talked about the interview. Incredible, overwhelming, terrifying, all of the above. She wrapped both hands around her cup, a gesture he was beginning to recognize as something she did when processing her thoughts. "They threw me straight into a major project. We're pitching to a potential investor next month, and I'm responsible for creating all the presentation materials. It's exactly what I wanted, but the learning curve is basically vertical." "You'll handle it." "You sound very confident about that. You got ready for a major interview in a stranger's bathroom after spilling coffee all over yourself. I think you can handle a presentation." She laughed, and Ethan realized he liked the sound of it. Unguarded, a little bit husky, completely natural. "When you put it that way, I suppose I have demonstrated grace under pressure." They fell into conversation easily after that, the kind of flowing dialogue that happens when two people discover unexpected common ground. Mara told him about growing up in Nebraska, about her mother's persistent disappointment in her career choices, about the nonprofit job in Chicago that had been meaningful but ultimately unsustainable. Ethan found himself sharing more than he'd intended, about Lily, about the divorce, about the strange liminal space of single fatherhood, where you're never quite enough for everyone who needs you. "How long have you been divorced?" Mara asked, her tone careful, respectful of boundaries. 2 years. It was civil, which somehow made it harder. No dramatic blow-up, no betrayal, just two people who'd grown into different versions of themselves and couldn't figure out how to grow back together. Ethan surprised himself with the honesty. He usually kept these details locked away, too private to share with colleagues, too painful to examine alone. "That sounds lonely." "It was. It is." He met her eyes. "But you learn to build a life around it. For Lily's sake, mostly." Mara nodded slowly. "I left someone behind in Chicago. Not a marriage, but close enough. 3 years together, and I kept waiting for it to feel like home. It never did." She traced the rim of her cup with one finger. "He wanted me to stay, to keep playing it safe. I wanted to take risks, to try something new. Eventually, I realized I was choosing between his comfort and my growth, and that's not really a choice at all." "Do you regret it?" "Leaving? Number. Waiting as long as I did to leave, every day." The afternoon light slanted through the cafe windows, painting everything in shades of amber and gold. Around them, other conversations buzzed, the gentle murmur of a place where people came to connect, to pause, to exist outside the demands of their regular lives. "I brought your blouse," Mara said, reaching down to pull a dry cleaning bag from her purse. "Professionally cleaned, inspected for any residual coffee stains, ready to be returned to your ex-wife's closet." Ethan waved it away. "Keep it. It looks better on you than it ever did on her." Mara's eyebrows rose. "That's either very generous or very petty, and I'm not sure which." "Can it be both?" She grinned. "I like that answer." She set the bag on the empty chair beside her. "Then I'll keep it, and I'll think of you every time I wear it, which might be weird, but we've already established that our entire relationship is built on weirdness, so we might as well lean into it." "Relationship," Ethan repeated, testing the word. "Friendship?" Mara offered. "Acquaintanceship? Strange alliance born of coincidence and unlocked doors?" "Any of those work." They ordered second cups of coffee, then third. The afternoon stretched into early evening, the autumn darkness coming earlier each day. Ethan knew he should leave. He had papers to grade, lesson plans to finalize, a daughter to call before her bedtime. But he found himself reluctant to break the spell of easy conversation, the comfortable rhythm they'd found. "Tell me about Lily," Mara said eventually. "What's she like?" Ethan felt the familiar warmth that always came when talking about his daughter. "Smart. Scary smart, actually. She's reading 3 grades above her level, and she asks questions that make me feel like I don't know anything about the world." He pulled out his phone, scrolling to his photos. "She's also dramatic in the way only 8-year-old girls can be. Everything is either the best thing ever or the worst tragedy in human history." The photo he showed Mara captured Lily mid-laugh, gap-toothed and joyful, her dark hair escaping from 2 lopsided braids. "She's beautiful," Mara said softly. "She has your eyes." "Poor kid." "Don't do that. You have nice eyes." Mara said it matter-of-factly, without flirtation, and somehow that made it land harder. Ethan cleared his throat. "She's with her mom this week. I get her back on Friday." "Is that hard? The switching back and forth? Every single time?" Ethan put his phone away. "But it's what's best for her having both of us active in her life. Even if it means my weeks feel unbalanced, tilted toward empty when she's gone." Mara was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "You're a good father. I can tell. You've known me for less than a week. Some things you just know." She finished her coffee and set down the cup with gentle finality. "I should let you go. I'm sure you have 1,000 things to do, and I've already monopolized your entire afternoon." Ethan didn't want to leave. That realization hit him with unexpected force. He didn't want this conversation to end, didn't want to return to his quiet house and his solitary evening routine, but he also knew that wanting something didn't make it wise. "This was nice," he said, gathering his jacket. "We should do it again sometime." "I'd like that." Mara stood, slinging her purse over her shoulder. "Same time next week?" They made it a standing appointment after that, Thursday afternoons at the Borrowed Cup, 4:30. Whoever arrived first would order. Over the following weeks, those coffee meetings became the highlight of Ethan's carefully structured existence. They talked about everything and nothing, swapping stories about difficult coworkers and childhood memories, debating books and movies, and the small philosophical questions that make life interesting. Mara had a way of seeing the world that was both pragmatic and idealistic, a combination Ethan found endlessly engaging. She didn't sugarcoat reality, but she also refused to be cynical about it. When Ethan talked about the challenges of teaching teenagers who seemed more interested in their phones than poetry, she listened without offering easy solutions, understanding that sometimes people just needed to be heard. The third Thursday, Mara brought a folder of presentation materials for her upcoming investor pitch. "Tell me if this makes sense," she said, spreading pages across their table. "I need an outsider's perspective. Someone who isn't drowning in technical jargon." Ethan studied the materials, clean graphics, compelling data, a narrative structure that built toward a clear ask. "It's good, really good, but this section here," he pointed to a paragraph dense with industry terminology. "You're losing your audience. Let's simplify it. Make them feel smart for understanding, not stupid for not being experts." Mara grabbed a pen and started scribbling notes in the margins. "Yes, that's exactly right. How did you—" "I spend my days translating complex ideas into language teenagers can understand. Same principle, different audience." She looked up at him, pen poised above the paper. "You're really good at this. Has anyone ever told you that?" "At teaching, occasionally. At seeing what people need. At knowing how to help without being condescending about it." She set down the pen. "It's a rare skill." Ethan felt heat creep up his neck. Compliments had been sparse in his marriage, and he'd forgotten how to receive them gracefully. "I'm just telling you what works in a classroom. You're doing more than that, and you know it." Their eyes met across the table, and something shifted, subtle, almost imperceptible, but definitely there. A recognition of possibility, perhaps, or the acknowledgement that whatever was happening between them had moved beyond simple friendship into territory neither had explicitly agreed to explore. Mara looked away first, gathering her papers with sudden focus. "I should practice the presentation. Thank you for the feedback. It actually helps." "Anytime." But when Thursday came around again, Mara wasn't at the cafe. Ethan waited for 20 minutes, then 30, checking his phone repeatedly for a message that didn't come. He told himself it was fine, that people had busy lives and unexpected obligations, that missing one coffee meeting didn't mean anything significant. But the disappointment sat heavy in his chest, and he couldn't quite convince himself it was proportional to the situation. He was halfway home when his phone finally buzzed. "I'm so sorry. Last-minute crisis at work. Investor moved the meeting up to tomorrow, and we're completely unprepared. Can I get a rain check?" Ethan pulled over to respond. "Of course. Good luck tomorrow. You'll be great. I need to be better than great. I need to be transcendent." He smiled despite his disappointment. "Then be transcendent. I believe in you." A long pause before her next message. "That means more than you know. Thank you." Friday afternoon, Ethan picked up Lily from her mother's house. She burst out the front door like a small hurricane, backpack bouncing, already talking before she reached the car. Dad, you won't believe what happened at school. Emma brought her hamster for show and tell, and it escaped, and we had to search the whole classroom, and Ms. Peterson was screaming because she's afraid of rodents, and—" Lily paused for breath as she buckled her seatbelt. "Can I get a hamster?" "No." Ethan pulled away from the curb, waving at his ex-wife who stood in the doorway. She didn't wave back. "But why not? I'd take care of it. I'd feed it and clean its cage and everything." "We've had this conversation. You said the same thing about the goldfish, remember?" Lily fell silent, presumably remembering the tragic fate of Mr. Bubbles, who'd lasted exactly 5 days under her care. "Maybe a plant," Ethan offered. "Something low maintenance." "Plants are boring. They don't do anything." "They produce oxygen. That's pretty important." Lily sighed with the weight of someone bearing tremendous injustice. "You're using logic against me again." "That's my job as a parent." They drove home in companionable silence, the kind that comes from knowing someone well enough that words aren't always necessary. Lily hummed to herself, swinging her feet, perfectly content. Ethan felt the familiar settling that happened when she came back. The house would feel right again, properly inhabited, filled with the noise and chaos that made it feel like home. His phone buzzed at a red light. Lily grabbed it before he could react. "Who's Mara?" she asked, reading the screen. "A friend. Don't read my messages." She says, "We did it. They're investing. I'm buying you dinner to celebrate, and I won't take no for an answer." Lily looked up at him with eyes far too knowing for an 8-year-old. "Is Mara your girlfriend?" "No, she's a friend who happens to be a woman. That's different." "Mom says you need to start dating again." Ethan focused very hard on the traffic light. "Your mom said that to you?" "I heard her talking to Aunt Marie on the phone. She said you've been alone too long and it's making you weird." The light turned green. Ethan drove, processing this information and trying to decide how he felt about his ex-wife discussing his love life, or lack thereof, where their daughter could overhear. "I'm not weird," he finally said. "You organize the cereal boxes by height." "That's efficient, not weird." Lily grinned, clearly enjoying herself. "So, are you going to have dinner with your friend Mara, who's not your girlfriend?" "I don't know, maybe." "You should. You're always happier on Thursdays after you see her." Ethan glanced at his daughter, surprised. "You notice that?" "I notice everything." Lily returned her attention to her feet, swinging them in a rhythm only she could hear. "It's okay if you like her, Dad. I won't be mad." Something in Ethan's chest tightened. "Thanks, sweetheart. But it's complicated." Everything's complicated when you're a grown-up. That's why being a kid is better. That evening, after Lily was fed and bathed and tucked into bed with her current favorite book, Ethan stood in his kitchen staring at his phone. Mara's message waited for a response, and he'd been composing and deleting replies for the past hour. Finally, he typed, "Congratulations on the investment. That's incredible. Dinner sounds great, but can I bring someone?" Her response came quickly. "Of course." "Who?" "My daughter. She's with me this weekend, and I don't want to get a sitter. If that's weird, we can reschedule." Another pause, longer this time. Ethan imagined her on the other end, processing this information, deciding if she wanted to get involved with someone who came as a package deal. Not weird at all. I'd love to meet her. How does she feel about Italian food? Ethan felt something unknot in his chest. She feels very positively about anything involving pasta. Perfect. Tomorrow night? There's a place called Antonio's near downtown. 6 o'clock? We'll be there. He set down his phone and stood in the quiet kitchen, listening to the house settle around him. Upstairs, Lily was probably still reading, ignoring his instruction to turn off her light. Outside, the autumn wind rattled the windows, carrying the smell of wood smoke and dying leaves. Ethan thought about Mara, about her easy laugh and her determination, about the way she'd looked at him across a cafe table and made him feel seen in a way he hadn't felt in years. He thought about Lily's casual acceptance, her pragmatic approach to the idea of him dating again. And he thought about the risk of letting someone new into their carefully constructed life, into the delicate balance he'd worked so hard to maintain. But standing there in his kitchen, Ethan realized that the careful life he'd built, while safe and predictable, had also become small, constrained, limited to routines and patterns that protected him from hurt but also from possibility. Maybe it was time to take a chance on something uncertain. Antonio's was warm and loud when they arrived Saturday evening, filled with the clatter of dishes and the buzz of weekend conversation. Lily held Ethan's hand as they navigated through the crowded restaurant, her eyes wide as she took in the hanging lights and the colorful murals on the walls. Mara was already seated at a corner booth, and she stood when she saw them approach. She'd dressed carefully, but not formally. A soft green sweater and jeans, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. When her eyes met Ethan's, her smile was genuine but nervous. "You must be Lily," Mara said, focusing on the 8-year-old with complete attention. "Your dad's told me a lot about you." Lily studied Mara with an intensity that made Ethan nervous. His daughter had inherited his tendency toward careful observation, and she wasn't easily impressed. "He's told me about you too," Lily finally said. "You broke into our house." Mara's eyes widened. Then she laughed, surprised and delighted. "I did. It was a complete accident, and I felt terrible about it, but yes, that's technically accurate." "Did you really use the shower?" "I really did. I was covered in coffee and running late for a job interview, and I thought your house was my friend's house." Mara sat back down, gesturing for them to join her. "It was the most embarrassing moment of my life, and your dad was incredibly kind about it." Lily slid into the booth across from Mara, and Ethan sat beside his daughter. "Were you scared when he came in with the baseball bat?" "Terrified," Mara admitted, "but he knocked first, which was very polite for someone confronting an intruder." "Dad's always polite, even when he's mad." Lily picked up her menu, apparently satisfied with this initial assessment. "What's good here?" They ordered pasta for Lily, chicken parmesan for Ethan, seafood linguine for Mara. The conversation flowed more easily than Ethan had dared hope. Mara had a gift for talking to children without being condescending, asking genuine questions and listening to Lily's answers with real interest. "So you're in 3rd grade?" Mara asked. "What's your favorite subject?" "Reading and science, but not math. Math is boring." "I used to think that too, until I realized math is just puzzle solving. Once I started thinking of it like a game, it got more interesting." Lily considered this. "What kind of game?" "Well, every equation is like a mystery where you have to figure out what the missing number is. You get clues, the numbers and symbols you can see, and you have to use logic to solve it." "Like detective work?" "Exactly like detective work." Ethan watched this exchange with something like wonder. Mara hadn't just deflected Lily's dislike of math. She'd reframed it entirely, meeting the child where she was and offering a new perspective. The food arrived, and they ate while Lily regaled them with stories from school, from her week with her mother, from the elaborate fantasy world she'd created with her friend Sophie. Mara listened with genuine engagement, asking follow-up questions, laughing at the right moments. Halfway through dinner, Lily excused herself to use the bathroom. Once she was out of earshot, Mara leaned across the table. "She's incredible," she said quietly. "Smart, funny, completely herself. You're doing an amazing job with her. She makes it easy, most of the time. Still, single parenting is..." Mara trailed off, seeming to search for words. "It's brave." Choosing to show up fully every day for someone who depends on you completely, that takes real strength. Ethan felt the compliment settle over him like a warm blanket. Thank you. And thank you for this, for being willing to have dinner with both of us. I know it's not what you signed up for when you suggested celebrating. Are you kidding? This is perfect. Mara's expression softened. I meant what I said in my text. You helped me when I desperately needed it, when I had no right to expect kindness from a stranger. Getting to know you better, getting to meet Lily, this is a gift. Lily returned then, sliding back into the booth and immediately stealing a piece of bread from Ethan's plate. Mara, do you have any kids? I don't, but I have a nephew who's about your age. His name is Connor, and he lives in Nebraska with my brother. Do you miss them? Every day, but we video chat on Sundays, and I'm planning to visit at Christmas. We're going to my grandma's for Christmas, Lily announced. She makes the best cookies in the entire world. They're shaped like snowmen and have icing faces. The conversation shifted to holiday traditions, to favorite cookies, to the merits of various Christmas movies. Mara held her own admirably, matching Lily's enthusiasm without pandering. When the check came, Mara insisted on paying despite Ethan's protests. I'm celebrating a major professional victory, she said firmly. Let me do this. Outside, the night had turned cold and Lily shivered in her light jacket. Without thinking, Ethan lifted her onto his shoulders, her hands gripping his hair for balance. Thanks for dinner, he said to Mara. This was really nice. It was. We should do it again. Mara looked up at Lily, perched on Ethan's shoulders. What do you think, Lily? Would you want to hang out again sometime? Can we go to the Science Museum? They have a new exhibit about outer space. Mara's face lit up. I love the Science Museum. Yes, absolutely. Let's do that. They made plans for the following Saturday, exchanging phone numbers and logistics. When they finally said goodbye, Lily waved enthusiastically from her elevated position. I like her, Lily announced as they walked to the car. She's smart, and she doesn't talk to me like I'm stupid. Those are good qualities in a person. Are you going to make her your girlfriend? Ethan unlocked the car and helped Lily down from his shoulders. It doesn't work like that, sweetheart. These things take time. But you like her, I can tell. Yeah, Ethan admitted, buckling her seatbelt. I like her. Good. She likes you too. How do you know that? Lily gave him a look of infinite patience. Because she kept looking at you the way you look at the last piece of chocolate cake, like she wants it, but she's trying to be polite about it. Ethan laughed, startled by his daughter's perceptiveness. Where did you learn to read people like that? I pay attention. You should try it sometime. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm. Coffee on Thursdays remained their standing appointment, but now there were other points of contact, text messages about articles they'd both read, photos of interesting things they encountered during the day, occasional phone calls that stretched long into the evening after Lily had gone to bed. The Science Museum trip was a success. Lily dragged them both through every exhibit, peppering them with questions about black holes and planetary orbits. Mara kept pace admirably, admitting when she didn't know something but speculating enthusiastically. At one point, Lily grabbed both their hands, swinging between them as they walked, and Ethan felt his heart do something complicated in his chest. They were building something, the three of them, something fragile and new, but undeniably real. But reality had a way of asserting itself. 3 weeks after that first dinner at Antonio's, Ethan's ex-wife called. We need to talk, Rebecca said without preamble. About Lily. Ethan's stomach dropped. Is she okay? She's fine. But she's been talking about your new girlfriend, and I have concerns. Mara isn't my girlfriend. She's a friend who you're introducing to our daughter, who you're spending weekends with, who Lily apparently won't stop talking about. Rebecca's voice was tight. I have a right to know who's being brought into my daughter's life. You're absolutely right, and I would have told you sooner, but there hasn't been anything official to tell. Mara and I are friends. We've hung out a few times, and yes, Lily's been there, but it's all very casual. Casual, Rebecca repeated skeptically. Lily says you smile more now, that you seem happier. Is that a problem? It is if you're rushing into something without thinking about how it affects her. She's already dealing with the divorce, with splitting her time between two houses. The last thing she needs is you parading a series of women through her life. Anger flared hot in Ethan's chest. A series of women? I haven't dated anyone since we split up. Mara's the first person I've even been interested in, and I've been incredibly careful about how I've introduced them. I'm not parading anyone through anyone's life. A long silence on the other end. When Rebecca spoke again, her voice was softer. I'm not trying to pick a fight. I just want to make sure Lily's protected. So do I. That's all I've been trying to do for the past 2 years. I know. I know you're a good father. Rebecca sighed. Just be careful, okay? Think about what you're doing before you get too deep into something. After they hung up, Ethan sat in his car outside the school where he'd been grading papers during his free period, trying to untangle his feelings. Rebecca wasn't wrong to be protective. Lily should be their priority, always. But he also couldn't live his entire life in stasis, refusing to pursue happiness because it might complicate things. That evening he called Mara. Rebecca called, he said when she answered. My ex-wife. She's concerned about you being around Lily. Oh. Mara's voice was carefully neutral. What did you tell her? The truth. That we're friends who are spending time together, and that I've been thoughtful about how I'm handling it with Lily. And what did she say? That I need to be careful, that Lily's been through enough. Mara was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her words were measured. She's not wrong. Lily has been through a lot, and the last thing I want is to be a source of instability in her life. You're not. If anything, you've been... Ethan struggled to find the right words. You've been good for both of us. You make things lighter somehow. But if Rebecca's uncomfortable, Rebecca doesn't get to dictate my personal life. We're divorced. We co-parent Lily, but that doesn't mean she gets veto power over who I spend time with. I don't want to cause problems between you two. That's not fair to Lily. Ethan heard the withdrawal in her voice, the careful distancing. Mara, don't do this. Don't pull away because one conversation got complicated. I'm not pulling away. I'm just being realistic. I care about you, Ethan, and I care about Lily, which means I care about making sure this is right for everyone involved, not just us. It is right. I know it is. How? How do you know? We've known each other for 2 months. That's not enough time to... It's enough time to know that I'm happier when you're around. That Lily lights up when she talks about you. That the life I was living before, safe and controlled and incredibly lonely, isn't the life I want anymore. Ethan took a breath. I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. But I also know I don't want to lose this because we're too scared to figure it out. Mara was silent so long he thought she might have hung up. Then quietly, I don't want to lose it either. So we keep going. We communicate with Rebecca, we're careful with Lily, and we see where this takes us. Together. Together, Mara echoed, and he could hear the smile in her voice. They kept going. But keeping going proved more challenging than either of them anticipated. Winter arrived early that year, bringing with it the kind of cold that settled into bones and refused to leave. The holidays loomed ahead like a minefield of expectations and obligations. Ethan had Lily for Thanksgiving, Rebecca for Christmas. The calendar dictated their lives with the precision of a metronome, every week planned and accounted for, leaving little room for spontaneity. Mara's company was thriving. The investor funding had opened new doors, brought new projects, demanded more of her time. She worked late most nights, her texts arriving at odd hours, apologizing for missed calls and rescheduled plans. Ethan understood. He'd seen ambition before, recognized the particular hunger of someone trying to prove themselves in a new role. But understanding didn't make the growing distance any easier to bear. They still had their Thursday coffees, but even those became irregular. Twice in November, Mara had to cancel last minute. Once, Ethan waited at the borrowed cup for 40 minutes before her message came through. Client emergency. So sorry, we'll make it up to you. He'd sat there alone, watching the barista wipe down tables for closing, and wondered if this was how things ended, not with drama or conflict, but with slow erosion, the gradual wearing away of something that had never quite gotten the chance to solidify. The third week of November, Lily asked the question he'd been dreading. Are you and Mara still friends? They were making dinner together, Lily standing on a stool to help stir the pasta sauce. Ethan paused mid-chop, the knife hovering over a half-diced onion. Of course we are. Why would you ask that? Because we haven't seen her in forever. And you don't smile at your phone anymore. Ethan set down the knife carefully. She's really busy with work right now, that's all. That's what Mom said about you before the divorce, that you were both just really busy. The observation hit harder than it should have. Ethan turned to face his daughter, the small person who saw far too much, who'd learned to read the spaces between words because her world had fractured along those same fault lines. That's different, sweetheart. Mara and I aren't married. We're just… Do you love her? The question hung in the air between them, impossible to dodge or deflect. Ethan looked at his daughter's serious face, her eyes so much like his own, waiting for an answer that felt true. I think I could, he said honestly. But love is complicated. It takes time and work and both people choosing it, every day. Then why aren't you choosing it? Why are you just letting her be busy? Out of the mouths of babes, Ethan thought. His 8-year-old daughter had just articulated the exact question he'd been avoiding for weeks. Because I'm scared, he admitted. Scared of getting hurt. Scared of getting you attached to someone who might not stay. Scared of messing up something good because I don't know how to do this anymore. Lily considered this with the gravity of someone much older. Then she wrapped her small arms around his waist, pressing her face against his side. You should tell her that, she said, voice muffled by his shirt. People can't fix problems they don't know about. That's what Ms. Peterson says when kids fight at school. Ethan hugged her back, marveling at the wisdom contained in this little human he was somehow responsible for raising. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't always pay attention. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan called Mara. She answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted. Hey, I'm actually in the middle of something. Can I call you back? No, Ethan said firmly. We need to talk, now. A pause. He heard background noise fade, a door closing. Okay, I'm listening. Are we doing this or not? Because I need to know. Not for me. Well, yes, for me, but also for Lily. She's getting attached, and if this isn't going anywhere, I need to start managing that now before it gets worse. Ethan, I'm not trying to pressure you. I know you're busy. I know the job is demanding, but I also know that when you want something, you make time for it. So either you want this and we figure out how to make it work, or you don't and we stop pretending. Silence stretched between them, loaded with everything they'd been avoiding saying. When Mara finally spoke, her voice was small, vulnerable in a way he'd never heard before. I'm terrified, she said. I moved here to start over, to build something meaningful. And then I met you, and suddenly there's this whole other thing I want that I wasn't planning for. I don't know how to do both. I don't know how to build a career and build a relationship and not fail at one or both of them. So we're both scared. Both? That's something, at least. Is it enough? I don't know, Ethan said honestly. But I know I'd rather try and fail than spend the rest of my life wondering what might have happened if we'd been brave enough to try. Mara laughed, shaky and wet like she might be crying. That's very romantic for a high school English teacher. I have my moments. Can you come over, right now? I know it's late, but I need to see you. Ethan looked at the clock. Almost 11. Lily was asleep upstairs and he couldn't just leave her. I can't. I have Lily. Right. Of course. Tomorrow then? Tomorrow I can do. Come to my place for dinner. 6 o'clock. We'll actually talk this through. Okay, yes. I'll be there. But she wasn't. 6 o'clock came and went. Ethan kept dinner warm, checked his phone obsessively, tried to ignore the growing knot of anxiety in his stomach. Lily set the table for 3, then quietly removed the third place setting when 7 o'clock passed with no word. At 7:30, his phone finally rang. I'm so sorry. Mara's voice was rushed, panicked. There's been a massive problem with the presentation for next week's conference. The entire team is here trying to fix it, and I can't leave, and I know I promised, but it's fine, Ethan said, even though it wasn't. It's not fine. I can hear it in your voice. Ethan, please, I'll make this up to you. This weekend, I'll block out the whole day. No work, just us. And if there's another crisis, another last-minute emergency that only you can solve, that's not fair, isn't it? You're proving my point, Mara. You keep saying you want this, but your actions say something different. I'm building something important. I can't just drop everything every time. I'm not asking you to drop everything. I'm asking you to show up when you say you will. to prioritize the people who matter to you occasionally, to choose this, us, even when it's inconvenient. He heard her sharp intake of breath. I am choosing you. I'm just also choosing my career, and I don't understand why I have to sacrifice one for the other. You don't. But right now, you're sacrificing us for work and calling it balance. The words hung between them, harsh and true. Ethan waited for her to argue, to defend herself, to push back against his assessment. Instead, she went very quiet. You're right, she said finally. You're absolutely right, and I hate it. A pause. I don't know how to fix this. Neither do I. So what do we do? Ethan looked at his daughter, who was pretending to read but clearly listening to every word. He thought about Rebecca's warnings, about the careful life he'd built, about all the ways love could hurt when it didn't work out. I think, he said slowly, we need to take some space. Figure out what we actually want, separately, before we try to figure it out together. You're breaking up with me. Her voice cracked on the words. We were never officially together, remember? We were just seeing where things went. Don't do that. Don't minimize this because you're hurt. I'm not minimizing anything. I'm being realistic. You have a career to build. I have a daughter to raise. Maybe the timing just isn't right. And if I don't want space, if I want to keep trying, then show me, not with words, but with actions. Show me that this matters to you as much as the job does. He heard her breathing on the other end, rapid and uneven. Okay, I have to go. They need me, but we're not done talking about this. Go, do your job. We'll talk later. The line went dead and Ethan stood in his kitchen holding a silent phone, feeling like he'd just made either the best or worst decision of his life. Lily appeared at his elbow, slipping her hand into his. I'm sorry, Dad. It's okay, sweetheart. Sometimes things don't work out the way we want them to. But you still love her. It wasn't a question. Ethan looked down at his daughter and saw his own heart reflected back at him, understood with the clarity that sometimes only children possess. Yeah, he admitted. I think I do. Then it'll work out. Love always finds a way. That's what happens in all the good stories. Ethan wished he had her faith. Instead, he had experience, had lived through the slow death of a marriage, had learned that love alone wasn't always enough to bridge the gaps between people. They ate dinner together in quiet, just the two of them, the third chair at the table a silent reminder of what was missing. The days that followed felt like moving through water, everything slower, heavier, requiring more effort than it should. Ethan went through the motions of teaching, of parenting, of maintaining the routines that structured his life. But something fundamental had shifted, leaving him unmoored in ways he couldn't quite articulate. Mara didn't call. He told himself that was fine, that he'd asked for space, that she was respecting his request. But as days turned into a week, then two, the silence began to feel less like respect and more like abandonment. Thanksgiving came. Ethan and Lily drove to his parents' house 3 hours north, spent the long weekend surrounded by family and familiar traditions. His mother asked about his love life with the particular invasiveness only mothers can get away with. He deflected, made vague statements about being too busy, about focusing on Lily. His father pulled him aside after dinner, handed him a beer on the back porch, while Lily played with her cousins inside. You want to talk about whatever's eating at you? Ethan took a long drink. Not particularly. Woman trouble? Is it that obvious? His father smiled, the same half-sad smile Ethan had inherited. Your mother says you've been checking your phone every 5 minutes like you're waiting for news from the hospital. That's either woman trouble or you've developed a gambling problem. Despite everything, Ethan laughed. There was someone. Is someone, maybe. I don't know. We wanted different things, or the same things at different speeds, and I told her we needed space to figure it out. And nothing. It's been 2 weeks and I haven't heard from her. His father was quiet for a moment, watching the winter sun sink below the tree line. Your mother and I almost didn't make it, you know. Early on, before you were born. She wanted to move to the city, chase this big career opportunity. I wanted to stay here, take over the hardware store for my father. We fought about it for months. Ethan turned to look at his father, surprised. He'd never heard this story. What happened? She chose me, turned down the job, stayed here, married me despite her mother's protests. His father took a sip of beer. And for about 10 years, she resented the hell out of me for it. Dad, let me finish. She resented me because I'd let her make a sacrifice without offering to make one myself. I'd been so focused on what I wanted that I never stopped to consider what we could build together if we both compromised. It took couples therapy and a near divorce before I figured out that love isn't about one person giving up their dreams for the other. It's about both people being willing to reshape their dreams to include each other. What are you saying? I'm saying that if this woman matters to you, if she's worth fighting for, then you need to fight. Not with words or ultimatums, but with genuine willingness to meet her halfway. Ask yourself what you're willing to give up, what you're willing to change, to make room for her in your life. Because I guarantee she's asking herself the same questions about you. The words settled over Ethan like snow, quiet and accumulating. He'd been so focused on what Mara needed to change, on how she needed to show up differently, that he hadn't considered what he might need to offer in return. They drove back Sunday evening, Lily chattering about her cousins the whole way. Ethan's phone sat in the cup holder between them, silent and accusatory. He picked it up 3 times to call Mara, put it down each time without dialing. Monday morning, he walked into school to find a package waiting in his mailbox. No return address, just his name and handwriting he recognized. Inside was a leather journal, expensive and clearly chosen with care. Tucked into the first page was a note. I've been using this to work through everything in my head, trying to understand what I want and what I'm willing to do to get it. Thought you might want to do the same. We should talk. Really talk. No interruptions, no phones, just honest conversation about what we're both afraid of and whether we're brave enough to face it together. Thursday? Our usual place? I'll be there at 4:30. If you don't come, I'll understand, but I hope you do. M. Ethan read the note 3 times, running his thumb over the ink, feeling the weight of the journal in his hands. It was an offering, a gesture of good faith, an acknowledgement that the space they'd taken had served its purpose. Thursday felt like it would never arrive. The days crawled past with excruciating slowness, each hour waited with anticipation and dread. Ethan found himself using the journal, writing out his fears and hopes in the privacy of late nights when Lily was asleep and the house was quiet. He was afraid of getting hurt, afraid of disrupting Lily's life with something that might not last, afraid of wanting something so much that losing it would break him. But he was also afraid of the alternative, of playing it safe for so long that he forgot how to take risks, of teaching his daughter through his actions that love wasn't worth the potential pain, of looking back at this moment years from now and regretting the choice he didn't make. Thursday arrived gray and cold, the kind of December day that threatened snow but hadn't quite committed. Ethan left school at 3:30, stopped home to change, dropped Lily at Rebecca's for her scheduled evening. His ex-wife gave him a knowing look when she answered the door. "You're seeing her again." "I'm going to talk to her, that's all." "For what it's worth," Rebecca said quietly, "I hope it works out. You deserve to be happy." The word surprised him. Rebecca had been so protective, so cautious about Mara's presence in Lily's life. "Thank you. Just don't mess it up by being stubborn. That was always your problem." Ethan smiled despite his nerves. "I'll try to remember that." The borrowed cup was crowded when he arrived, full of students studying for finals and people seeking refuge from the cold. He scanned the room and found Mara already there, seated at their usual corner table, 2 cups of coffee already waiting. She looked different somehow. Tired, maybe, with shadows under her eyes that spoke to sleepless nights, but also more present, more focused, like she'd come to some internal decision and was ready to stand by it. Ethan slid into the seat across from her, and for a long moment they just looked at each other. "Hi," Mara said finally. "Hi. I wasn't sure you'd come." "I wasn't sure either, right up until I walked through the door." She smiled, tentative and hopeful. "I'm glad you did. I've been thinking a lot over the past few weeks, about what you said, about showing up, about choosing this even when it's hard." And you were right. I was treating the job like it was the only thing that mattered, like I could put everything else on hold until I'd proven myself. But that's not sustainable, and more importantly, it's not fair to you. or to us. Ethan waited, letting her continue. I talked to my boss yesterday, told her I needed to set better boundaries, that I can't be the person who drops everything for every crisis. She was surprisingly understanding. Apparently, I'm not the first person to burn out trying to prove I belong there. Mara wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. I'm delegating more, taking actual time off, protecting my personal life the way I've been protecting my work life. That's good, really good. But I also need to know if there's still an us to protect. Because if I've already ruined this, if the space we took showed you that you're better off without me, then I need to know that too. Ethan thought about his father's words, about compromise and reshaping dreams. I've been thinking too, about what I'm willing to change to make room for you in my life. I've been so focused on protecting Lily, on maintaining stability, that I've used it as an excuse not to take risks. But stability without growth is just stagnation. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to try, really try, not just cautiously dipping our toes in the water. I want to introduce you as my girlfriend, not just my friend. I want to make plans more than a week in advance. I want to build something real with you, even though it's scary and complicated and might not work out. Mara's eyes were bright, either with tears or hope or both. I want that too, so much. Then we need to set some ground rules, real expectations about communication and time and what we need from each other. They talked for 3 hours, the coffee going cold as they mapped out what a real relationship might look like. Mara needed space to focus on her career, but she promised a minimum of 2 dedicated evenings a week and all of Sunday. Ethan needed reassurance that he wasn't competing with her job for her attention, but he acknowledged that her career mattered and deserved respect. They talked about Lily, about the responsibility of including her in something that was still new and undefined. Mara suggested regular check-ins about how Lily was feeling, about whether the arrangement was working for everyone involved. They talked about their fears, Mara's terror of failing at something that mattered, Ethan's dread of abandonment and loss. Putting words to those fears didn't make them disappear, but it did make them manageable, shared burdens instead of individual weights. When they finally left the cafe, it was full dark outside, the first snowflakes beginning to fall. Mara stood close to him in the parking lot, close enough that he could see the snowflakes catching in her hair. So we're doing this, she said. Officially. Officially. I'm going to mess up sometimes. Show up late, get too absorbed in work, forget to text back. I'm going to be overprotective of Lily, second guess everything, pull back when I get scared. Mara reached for his hand, threading their fingers together. And we'll figure it out as we go. Together. Ethan pulled her closer, and she came willingly, fitting against him in a way that felt both new and inevitable. He kissed her there in the parking lot, snowflakes falling around them, and felt something in his chest unlock. I love you, he said against her hair, surprised by how easy it was to say. I love you too. Even though you're stubborn and cautious and you organize cereal boxes by height. Lily told you about that? She tells me everything. I'm a very good listener. They stood there in the cold, holding each other while the snow accumulated on the parked cars and the world transformed around them. Inside the borrowed cup, people were gathering their things, heading home to warm houses and waiting families. Ethan thought about the night Mara had accidentally invaded his life, about the unlikely chain of events that had led to this moment, a wrong address, a spare key, a shower in a stranger's bathroom. All of it improbable, all of it somehow exactly right. Come meet my parents, he heard himself say, for Christmas. It's unconventional, and they'll ask inappropriate questions, but I want them to know you. I want everyone to know you. Mara pulled back enough to look at him, snowflakes on her eyelashes. Are you sure? That's a big step. I'm sure. Unless you have other plans? I was going to Nebraska to see my family, but I could do both, maybe. A few days with you, then fly out to my brother's. Or, Ethan said carefully, you could bring your family here. My parents' house is huge, and my mom would love the chaos. We could do one big combined holiday. That's insane. Probably, but also kind of perfect. Mara laughed, the sound bright against the quiet snow. You know what? Yes. Let's do something insane. Let's throw our families together and see what happens. They made plans standing there in the parking lot, breath fogging in the cold air, building a future one careful decision at a time. It wouldn't be easy, combining families never was, especially when relationships were still new and fragile. But they'd learned something important over the past few weeks, that love wasn't about perfection or perfect timing. It was about choosing each other repeatedly, especially when it would be easier not to. 3 weeks later, Ethan stood in his parents' kitchen, watching organized chaos unfold around him. His mother was directing operations with military precision, his father was attempting to explain football to Mara's brother, and somewhere in the living room, Lily was teaching Mara's nephew Connor the finer points of board game strategy. Mara appeared at his elbow, sliding an arm around his waist. "Your family is wonderful, loud, but wonderful. They like you. My mom's already planning our wedding, just so you're aware. I heard her talking to my mother about venues. Apparently spring would be ideal." Ethan felt a flutter of panic, then looked at Mara's amused expression and relaxed. Too soon? Way too soon, but also kind of sweet that they're already picturing it. Through the kitchen window, snow was falling again, covering the world in fresh white. Inside, the house was warm and full, filled with the kind of noise that comes from people who are learning to belong to each other. Lily ran into the kitchen, Connor chasing behind her, both of them laughing. "Dad, Mara, come see what we built. It's a fort, and it has 3 rooms and a secret tunnel." They followed the children into the living room, where couch cushions and blankets had been transformed into an elaborate structure. Connor disappeared inside immediately, but Lily paused at the entrance. "Mara, are you going to be around for a long time? Like, forever?" The adults in the room went quiet, everyone suddenly finding the wall decorations extremely interesting. Ethan started to intervene, to tell Lily that was a complicated question, but Mara spoke first. "I can't promise forever, because nobody can really promise that. But I can promise that I plan to be around for a very long time, and that I care about you and your dad very much. Is that okay?" Lily considered this with her characteristic seriousness. Then she nodded, apparently satisfied. "Okay, you can come see the fort now." Mara crawled into the blanket fort behind both children, and Ethan heard their voices rise in excited conversation about secret codes and imaginary kingdoms. His mother appeared beside him, watching the same scene. "She's good with her." "Yeah, she is." "You're happy. I haven't seen you this happy in years." Ethan watched Mara emerge from the fort, laughing at something Lily had said, and felt the truth of his mother's words settle over him. He was happy. Genuinely, surprisingly happy in a way he'd stopped believing was possible. "I am," he agreed. "Then don't mess it up." "I'll do my best." But even as he said it, Ethan felt the smallest tremor of unease. Everything was going well, maybe too well. He'd learned through experience that happiness this uncomplicated usually meant complications were waiting just around the corner. He pushed the thought aside, determined to enjoy the moment, to be present in this beautiful chaos they'd created. But somewhere in the back of his mind, a quiet voice whispered that the hardest tests were still to come. That quiet voice of unease proved prophetic, though the complication came from a direction Ethan never anticipated. The new year arrived with a cold snap that froze the pipes in half the houses on Maple Ridge Drive. Ethan spent the first week of January dealing with plumbers and space heaters, grateful that at least his own house had been spared. Mara had been traveling for work, a 3-day conference in Seattle that stretched to 5 when weather delays trapped her on the West Coast. She called him from the airport on the 6th day, exhaustion heavy in her voice. "I'm finally boarding. I should be home by midnight." "You want me to pick you up? I can get a sitter for Lily." "No, don't worry about it. I'll just grab a car. I mostly wanted to hear your voice." Ethan settled deeper into his couch, phone pressed to his ear. "How was the conference?" "Productive. Exhausting. I met some incredible people. Made connections that could really help the company." A pause. "And I got offered a job." Ethan's hand tightened on the phone. "What?" "One of the keynote speakers. She runs this amazing consulting firm based in Portland. They're doing exactly the kind of work I've dreamed about. Sustainable tech implementation on a massive scale. She pulled me aside after my presentation and basically offered me a position on the spot." Wow. That's incredible." Ethan tried to make his voice sound enthusiastic, but the words came out hollow. "I turned her down." Relief flooded through him. followed immediately by guilt. You didn't have to do that. If it was a good opportunity, it was an amazing opportunity, but it was also in Portland, which is 1,000 miles from where I want to be. Mara's voice softened. I didn't even hesitate, Ethan. She was talking about salary and benefits and career trajectory, and all I could think was that none of it mattered if it meant leaving you and Lily. Mara, let me finish. I turned it down, and I don't regret it. But it also made me realize something. I'm happy at Riverside Tech, but I'm not building toward anything long-term there. I'm maintaining, not growing. And that conversation made me start thinking about what I actually want my career to look like 5 years from now. Ethan sat up straighter, sensing something important hovering just beneath her words. And what do you want? I want to start my own firm, here, locally. Focus on small to mid-sized businesses that want to implement sustainable practices but don't know where to start. I've been thinking about it for the past 3 days, and the more I think about it, the more right it feels. That's a huge risk. I know. I'd need to build a client base from scratch, probably take a significant pay cut for the first year or two. I'd be gambling on myself in a major way. She took a breath. And I wanted to talk to you about it before I made any decisions, because this affects you too. If I do this, money's going to be tight. I won't be able to go out as much, won't be able to split expensive dinners or take trips or... Stop. Ethan cut her off gently. If this is what you want, if this is your dream, then you should do it. We'll figure out the rest. You mean that? Completely. You turned down Portland for me. The least I can do is support you building something here. He heard her exhale, a sound that might have been relief or joy or both. I love you. Have I mentioned that recently? Not in the last 12 hours. Well, I do. I love you so much it's slightly terrifying. They talked until her flight boarded, making tentative plans for her business launch. When they hung up, Ethan sat in the quiet of his living room, feeling a complex mixture of pride and fear. He meant what he'd said about supporting her, but he also couldn't ignore the small voice asking what would happen if the business failed, if the financial pressure became too much, if she started to resent him for being the reason she'd stayed and struggled instead of leaving and succeeding. February brought Mara's resignation from Riverside Tech and the beginning of her new venture. She registered the business as Lane Consulting, rented a small office space above a coffee shop downtown, and threw herself into building a client base with the same fierce determination she'd brought to everything else. Ethan watched her work 12-hour days, saw the stress lines deepen around her eyes, noticed how she'd stopped sleeping well. She assured him everything was fine, that this was normal for a startup, that she'd expected the adjustment period to be difficult. But 3 months in, on a Tuesday evening in early May, Mara showed up at Ethan's house unannounced. He opened the door to find her standing on his porch, mascara smudged, looking more defeated than he'd ever seen her. I need to talk to you, she said quietly. Lily was at her mother's, so they had the house to themselves. Ethan led Mara to the kitchen, poured her a glass of wine she didn't touch, and waited. I got an email today, she finally said, from the woman in Portland. Her firm is expanding, opening a satellite office in San Francisco. She's offering me the position again, this time as director of the new office. It's a 3-year contract, guaranteed salary, full benefits, everything I'd need to feel financially secure. Ethan's stomach dropped. And you're considering it? I don't want to. But Ethan, the business isn't working. I've landed exactly 2 clients in 3 months, and neither of them is paying enough to cover my overhead. I'm burning through my savings at an unsustainable rate, and I'm starting to panic about money in a way I haven't since I was fresh out of college. How bad is it? Mara pulled out her phone, pulled up a spreadsheet, and showed him numbers that made his breath catch. She was hemorrhaging money, would be completely broke within another 2 months at her current rate. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I was sure I could turn it around. Because I didn't want to admit that maybe I made a mistake leaving Riverside Tech. Because... Her voice cracked. Because I'm supposed to be good at this, and it's terrifying to fail at something I was so confident about. Ethan moved around the table and pulled her into his arms. She came willingly, pressing her face against his shoulder, her whole body trembling with suppressed emotion. You haven't failed. Starting a business takes time. Time I don't have, not anymore. She pulled back enough to look at him. The San Francisco job would solve all of this. It's only 3 hours away. We could do long distance, weekends together. No, The word came out sharper than he'd intended. Mara stilled. What? I've done long distance, with Rebecca, near the end. Every weekend visit felt like borrowed time. Every goodbye got harder, and eventually the relationship just eroded under the weight of absence. Ethan took Mara's hands in his. I don't want that with you. I can't build a life with someone who's 3 hours away, who I only see on weekends. Lily can't get attached to someone who's part-time present. So what are you saying? That I should turn down the job and just go bankrupt here? I'm saying there has to be another option, some middle ground between financial ruin and moving away. I've been looking for a middle ground for 3 months. It doesn't exist. They sat in strained silence, the weight of impossible choices pressing down on them. Outside, spring rain had started to fall, the kind of gentle persistence that would soak everything through given enough time. What if I came with you? Ethan heard himself say. Mara's head snapped up. What? To San Francisco. What if Lily and I moved with you? I could find a teaching job there. We could rent out this house to cover the mortgage. It would be a fresh start for all of us. Ethan, you can't uproot your entire life for me. What about Lily's school, her friends? What about Rebecca? You can't just take Lily across the state. Rebecca moved here for her job. She chose her career over geography. Maybe it's my turn to do the same. That's different, and you know it. She had legal custody discussions, lawyers, a whole process. You'd be starting a custody battle that could get ugly really fast. Ethan knew she was right, but the alternative felt impossible to accept. So we just give up? After everything we've been through, we just let geography win? I don't want to give up, but I also can't let you destroy your relationship with your ex-wife and disrupt your daughter's entire life for me. That's not fair to any of you. And it's fair for you to sacrifice your financial security to stay here? To keep struggling with a business that might never be profitable? Mara stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Rain streaked the glass, distorting the view of the street beyond. Maybe I made a mistake. Turning down Portland in the first place, starting this business, thinking I could have both the career and the relationship. Maybe I should have just stayed at Riverside Tech and been grateful for what I had. Don't do that. Don't reduce yourself to make this easier. I'm being realistic. I tried to have it all, and now I'm facing the consequences of that hubris. Ethan crossed to her, turned her to face him. You're not hubristic. You're brave. You took a risk on yourself, and it didn't work out the way you hoped. That doesn't make you a failure. It makes you human. A broke human who's about to have to choose between the man she loves and financial stability. Mara's eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying yet. How did we get here? 6 months ago, everything was perfect. It was never perfect. We were just better at ignoring the complications. She laughed, a broken sound. That's probably true. They stood there in the fading light, holding each other while the rain continued its steady fall. Ethan's mind raced through possibilities, through scenarios and solutions that all seemed to have fatal flaws. Move to San Francisco and fight Rebecca for custody, potentially damaging his relationship with his daughter forever. Stay here and watch Mara leave. Let the distance slowly kill what they'd built. Ask her to stay and struggle, knowing she might eventually resent him for it. I need time, Mara said finally, to think about this, to really look at all the options. The San Francisco job doesn't start for 3 months. That gives us a little breathing room. Okay, how much time do you need? I don't know, a week? 2 weeks? Long enough to see if any of my current pitches convert to actual clients, long enough to get real about what my finances look like going forward. And in the meantime? In the meantime, we keep going. We don't make any dramatic decisions when we're both emotional and scared. Ethan nodded, even though the waiting felt like torture. We should tell Lily. If there's a chance we might have to move, she deserves to be part of that conversation. Not yet. Not until we know for sure what's happening. Why worry her when we might find a solution? He wanted to argue, but part of him was relieved to postpone that particular conversation. Okay, but soon. No matter what we decide, we tell her soon. Mara left an hour later, the rain still falling, her taillights disappearing into the wet darkness. Ethan stood on his porch watching her go, feeling like he was watching something precious slip through his fingers. The next 2 weeks were the longest of Ethan's life. He and Mara saw each other less, both of them caught up in their own spirals of anxiety and planning. When they did talk, the conversations were careful, both of them avoiding the topic that dominated their thoughts. Lily noticed the change immediately. "Are you and Mara fighting?" she asked one evening over dinner. "No, sweetheart, we're just dealing with some complicated adult stuff." "Like what?" Ethan set down his fork, wondering how much to share. "Mara's business isn't going as well as she hoped. She might need to take a different job to make ends meet." "Where's the job?" "In San Francisco, which is far away." Lily's face crumpled. "She's leaving?" "We don't know yet. She's still deciding." "Can't you do something? Can't you help her so she doesn't have to leave?" The question hit harder than Lily probably intended. "I'm trying, sweetheart, but sometimes problems don't have easy solutions." "You could marry her. Then she'd have to stay." Out of the mouths of babes, Ethan thought again. "It doesn't work that way." "Why not? You love her, she loves you. Married people stay together." "Except when they don't. Your mom and I were married, remember?" Lily fell silent, pushing food around her plate. When she spoke again, her voice was small. "I don't want her to go. I like having her around." "I know. I like it too." "Then do something, Dad. You're a grown-up. Grown-ups are supposed to fix things." If only it were that simple, Ethan thought. But children believed in the omnipotence of parents, in the idea that adults had power and control over the chaotic world. It was a belief he hated to shatter. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan did something he'd been avoiding for months. He looked up his bank account, calculated his savings, figured out exactly what he could afford to lose. The number was smaller than he'd hoped, but not insignificant. Enough to help Mara keep her business afloat for another few months, to give her more runway to land clients and build sustainability. But offering it felt complicated, fraught with power dynamics and potential resentment. What if she saw it as him trying to buy her presence, to obligate her to stay? What if she said yes out of desperation and then resented him for it later? What if she said no and he'd made everything worse by offering? He was still wrestling with the question when his phone rang, Mara's name on the screen. "Hey," he answered. "I landed a client." Her voice was breathless, excited. "A major one. A tech company that wants to completely overhaul their environmental practices. It's a 6-month contract, and if I do well, they're talking about renewal and possibly referring me to other companies in their network." Relief crashed over Ethan like a wave. "That's incredible. When did this happen?" "This afternoon. I've been in meetings all evening, hammering out the details. Ethan, this changes everything. The contract alone will cover my overhead for the next 6 months and give me actual money to live on. And if I can use it to build my portfolio, to prove the business model works, you can turn down San Francisco." "I can turn down San Francisco," she confirmed, joy evident in every word. "I can stay. We can keep building this. I don't have to choose." Ethan felt something in his chest unlock, a tension he'd been carrying for weeks suddenly releasing. "I was going to offer you money to help keep the business going." Silence on the other end. "You were?" "I've been sitting here for the past hour trying to figure out how to bring it up without making it weird. I know it's complicated, mixing finances when we're not married, but I couldn't just watch you struggle when I had the ability to help." "How much were you going to offer?" He told her. Her sharp intake of breath told him it was more than she'd expected. "Ethan, that's your savings, your safety net. And you're my future." Seemed like a reasonable investment. "I can't take your money." "I know. That's why I was having such a hard time figuring out how to offer it. But I needed you to know that I would have, that I was willing to bet everything on us." Mara's voice was thick with emotion when she spoke again. "I love you. I love you so much it actually hurts sometimes." "I love you too. Come over. Let's celebrate properly." She arrived 20 minutes later, and Ethan pulled her into his arms the moment she stepped through the door. They stood in the entryway holding each other while the relief and joy washed over them both. "I was so scared," Mara admitted. "I thought I was going to have to choose, and I didn't know if I could do it. If I could pick my career over you or pick you over my career without resenting one choice or the other. We got lucky. The universe decided to cut us a break. Or I got good at what I do, and someone finally recognized it." She pulled back to look at him. "I know it's not over. Building a business is still going to be hard, and there will be other challenges. But at least now I know we can get through them together. Together, Ethan agreed. They celebrated quietly, opening a bottle of wine, talking late into the night about plans and possibilities. Mara told him about the new client, about the scope of work, and what it would mean for her reputation. Ethan told her about Lily's reaction, about their daughter's simple belief that love should be enough to solve all problems. "She's not entirely wrong," Mara said. "Love might not solve everything, but it's a pretty good foundation to start from." Around midnight, Mara's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then froze. "What is it?" Ethan asked. "Email from my contact at the San Francisco firm. She's reaching out one last time, wants to know my final decision. Says the offer expires tomorrow." "Then I guess you know what you need to write back." Mara stared at the phone for a long moment, and Ethan could see the war playing out behind her eyes. Even with the new client, San Francisco represented security, prestige, a guaranteed path forward. Staying meant continued risk, continued uncertainty, the very real possibility that the business could still fail. But it also meant staying with him, with Lily, with the life they were building together. She opened her email and typed out a response, then showed it to Ethan before sending. "Thank you so much for the incredible opportunity and for your patience with my decision-making process. After careful consideration, I've decided to decline the position. I'm building something meaningful here, both professionally and personally, and I'm committed to seeing it through. I hope our paths cross again in the future, and I wish you and the firm continued success." "You're sure?" Ethan asked. "I'm sure." She hit send, then set down her phone with a decisive gesture. "No more backup plans, no more safety nets. I'm all in on this life, scary as that is." Ethan kissed her then, pouring everything he felt into the gesture. Gratitude and relief and love and hope all tangled together. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "Stay tonight," he said. "We'll make pancakes in the morning. Tell Lily the good news together." "I'd like that." They fell asleep on the couch, wrapped around each other, the TV playing softly in the background. When Ethan woke a few hours later, his neck stiff from the awkward angle, he found Mara awake beside him, watching him with an expression of such tenderness it made his heart ache. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How 6 months ago I thought I had to choose between career and relationship, between financial security and emotional fulfillment. And how wrong I was. Not because I can have everything without struggle, but because the right person makes you want to struggle for everything together." "That's very philosophical for 3 a.m. She laughed quietly. "I'm a philosophical person. You should know that about me by now." "I'm learning new things about you every day." "Good. That's how it should be. If we ever stop surprising each other, we're in trouble." They moved upstairs to Ethan's actual bed, fell back asleep in a tangle of limbs and contentment. When morning came, they made pancakes as promised, and Lily burst into the kitchen still in her pajamas, delighted to find Mara there. "Does this mean she's staying?" Lily asked through a mouthful of pancakes. "This means she's staying," Ethan confirmed. Lily cheered, then immediately launched into plans for all the things they could do now that Mara wasn't leaving. The zoo, the water park, the camping trip they'd talked about but never scheduled. Watching his daughter and his girlfriend plan their future together, Ethan felt a peace he'd been chasing for years finally settle over him. It wasn't perfect. There would be more challenges, more moments of doubt and fear, but they'd survived the tests that had felt insurmountable, and that survival had forged something stronger. Later that week, Mara came to dinner with papers in hand. She spread them across Ethan's kitchen table with the air of someone making a presentation. "I've been thinking," she said, "about what Lily said, about marriage." Ethan's heart skipped. And I'm not proposing, not yet anyway, but I am saying that I want to build toward that. I want us to start thinking about what a shared future actually looks like, not just in vague terms, but in concrete ones. "What did you have in mind?" "Move in together. Not immediately, but maybe in 6 months. Give me time to stabilize the business, give you time to prepare Lily. Give us both time to make sure this is really what we want." "It is what I want." "I already know that." "I know that too. But there's knowing in your heart and knowing in your practical adult brain that's good at seeing all the complications. I want both of us to be sure with both parts of ourselves." Ethan looked at the papers she'd brought. Printouts of rental listings, spreadsheets comparing costs, a timeline she'd sketched out with her characteristic attention to detail. She'd thought this through carefully, approached it with the same serious consideration she brought to everything important. 6 months, he said. We move in together in 6 months. And then we see where that takes us. And then we see where that takes us, Mara agreed. They shook on it, formal and slightly silly, then laughed at the absurdity of treating their relationship like a business deal. But there was comfort in the structure, in the concrete plan that took vague hopes and turned them into achievable goals. That night, Ethan lay in bed thinking about the past 6 months, about the journey from a stranger in his shower to a partner in his life. It had been messy and complicated, and sometimes painful, but it had also been real in a way nothing had been real for him in years. He thought about Lily's simple faith that love solved problems, about his father's advice to meet someone halfway, about Mara's determination to build something meaningful even when the path was unclear. All of it had brought them here, to this moment of choosing each other repeatedly, deliberately, with full knowledge of what it cost and what it offered in return. Outside his window, spring was turning to summer, the days growing longer and warmer. In 6 months it would be winter again, the year coming full circle. And if their plans held, by then his life would look completely different. Shared space, combined routines, the daily intimacy of building a life with someone who'd once been a stranger. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, it filled him with anticipation, with the kind of hope that felt durable enough to withstand whatever challenges lay ahead. Ethan smiled in the darkness and let himself imagine that future, let himself believe in it. The hardest part was over. Everything else was just the work of loving someone day after day, choice after choice, until those choices became as natural as breathing. And he was ready for that work, more ready than he'd ever been for anything in his life. The 6 months passed faster than Ethan expected, each week folding into the next with the particular velocity that comes when life is good and you're not constantly bracing for disaster. Mara's business grew steadily. The major client led to referrals, which led to more clients, which led to her hiring a part-time assistant by August. She kept the small office above the coffee shop, but it transformed from a desperate attempt to look professional into an actual thriving workspace. Ethan would sometimes meet her there for lunch, climbing the narrow stairs to find her deep in conversation with clients, or hunched over her laptop building presentations that would convince skeptical executives to invest in sustainability. They fell into rhythms, the kind that develop naturally when two people are deliberately building toward something. Tuesday nights became pasta night, with Lily helping to roll out fresh dough on Mara's kitchen counter. Saturday mornings meant the farmer's market, the three of them wandering through stalls of vegetables and artisan bread. Lily negotiating for samples while Ethan and Mara planned the week's meals. Sunday afternoons were for whatever they felt like. Sometimes the science museum, sometimes just sprawling on the couch watching movies while Lily built elaborate structures with her building blocks. Rebecca noticed the changes too. She'd been cautiously supportive when Ethan first told her about the plan to move in together. Her main concern focused entirely on Lily's well-being. But as the months progressed and Lily remained happy and secure, Rebecca's wariness softened into something approaching acceptance. One October evening, when Ethan arrived to pick up Lily from her mother's house, Rebecca invited him in for coffee. It was the first time they'd had a real conversation in months, the kind that went beyond logistics and scheduling. She talks about Mara constantly, Rebecca said, pouring coffee into mugs that Ethan recognized from their marriage. Mara says this, Mara showed me that. I'll admit, I was jealous at first. Ethan wrapped his hands around the warm mug. I didn't mean for... I know you didn't, and honestly, the jealousy wasn't rational. It's good that Lily has another positive female influence in her life. Rebecca sat across from him at the kitchen table. I'm saying this badly. What I mean is, I can see that you're happy, really happy, not just going through the motions, and Lily's happy too, which is what matters most. Thank you. That means a lot, coming from you. Rebecca smiled, a genuine expression that reminded Ethan of why he'd fallen for her in the first place, before everything got complicated. I want you to know that I support this, the moving in together thing. I know I gave you a hard time initially, but I can see now that Mara's good for you, good for Lily too. I appreciate that. There's something else. Rebecca set down her coffee cup with deliberate care. David proposed last night. Ethan felt a flicker of surprise, followed quickly by happiness for his ex-wife. David was the man Rebecca had been seeing for the past year, a quiet accountant who treated her well and didn't seem threatened by the complicated dynamics of co-parenting. That's wonderful. Congratulations. We're thinking spring wedding, something small, and I wanted to make sure you and Mara felt comfortable attending. I know it might be awkward, but Lily would want you both there, and honestly, I'd like you there too. The request surprised him more than the engagement announcement. We'd be honored, really. They talked for another 20 minutes, an easy conversation that felt like healing, like two people who'd hurt each other finding their way to genuine friendship. When Ethan finally left with Lily, he felt lighter somehow, as if a weight he'd been carrying since the divorce had finally been lifted. The move happened on a cold Saturday in November, exactly 6 months after they'd made the plan. Ethan had rented out his house on Maple Ridge Drive to a young couple expecting their first baby, keeping it as an investment property and a safety net. Mara had found a larger apartment across town, a 3-bedroom place with hardwood floors and enough space for all of them to spread out. Lily got her own room, which she decorated with Mara's help. Walls painted a soft lavender, shelves for her growing book collection, a reading nook by the window where she could curl up with a flashlight and disappear into other worlds. The first night in the new place, they ordered pizza and ate sitting on the floor because none of the furniture was properly arranged yet. Boxes surrounded them like small mountains, each one labeled in Mara's neat handwriting or Ethan's messier scrawl. "This is weird," Lily announced, tomato sauce on her chin, "but good weird." "Good weird is the best kind," Mara agreed, wiping the sauce away with a napkin. Ethan looked at the two of them, at his daughter and his girlfriend in their new shared space, and felt a contentment so profound it almost hurt. This was what he'd been working toward, what all the difficult conversations and compromises had been building to. A family. Unconventional, maybe, but whole in all the ways that mattered. That night, after Lily was tucked into her new bed in her new room, Ethan and Mara stood in their shared bedroom surrounded by unpacked boxes and mismatched furniture. "We did it," Mara said quietly. "We actually did it. Were you worried we wouldn't?" "A little. Not about wanting to, but about whether we could navigate all the complications." She turned to face him. Single dad, demanding career, ex-wife, 8-year-old with opinions about everything. That's a lot of variables. And yet, here we are. "Here we are," she echoed, moving into his arms. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the quiet of their new home. Outside, the November wind rattled the windows, but inside it was warm and safe, and theirs. The weeks that followed were an adjustment. Living together meant seeing each other at their worst, morning breath and bad moods, and the particular irritation that comes from someone loading the dishwasher wrong. They had their first real fight 3 weeks in, over something stupid that escalated because they were both tired and stressed. Ethan had snapped about Mara working too late again, about her missing dinner without calling. Mara had fired back about him being controlling, about not understanding the demands of running a business. Lily had heard the raised voices and retreated to her room, and the guilt of that had made everything worse. They'd resolved it eventually, both of them apologizing, both of them recognizing that the fight was really about fear. Ethan's fear of being abandoned again, Mara's fear of losing herself in someone else's expectations. But the recognition didn't make the fight feel good, and the make-up conversation that followed was difficult and necessary. "We're going to mess this up sometimes," Mara said, sitting on their bed while Ethan paced. "We're two people with baggage and triggers and old wounds that don't heal just because we love each other." "I know that. I just hate fighting in front of Lily." "We weren't fighting in front of her. We had a disagreement that she overheard. There's a difference." Mara patted the bed beside her, and Ethan sat. "My parents never fought. They bottled everything up and then divorced when I was 12, completely out of the blue from my perspective. I spent years thinking that conflict meant failure. But it doesn't. Conflict just means two people who care enough to work through their differences." "Your parents divorced because they didn't fight? They divorced because they didn't communicate. Fighting, when it's productive, is communication." She took his hand. "I need you to trust that my working late sometimes doesn't mean I'm choosing work over you. And you need to communicate when you're feeling neglected instead of letting it build up into resentment." "You're right. I'm sorry." "I'm sorry too." I should have called about missing dinner. They talked through it, establishing new patterns and expectations. Mara would text if she was going to be more than 30 minutes late. Ethan would speak up earlier when he was feeling worried instead of waiting until he was angry. They'd check in with each other once a week about how things were going, small adjustments before they became big problems. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And real, Ethan was learning, was better than perfect. December arrived with the kind of snow that transformed everything into a winter postcard. Lily made snow angels in the apartment complex's courtyard while Ethan and Mara watched from the window, coffee cups warming their hands. "I've been thinking," Mara said quietly so only Ethan could hear, "about next steps." Ethan's heart rate picked up. "What kind of next steps?" "The permanent kind." She turned to face him, her expression serious but warm. "I know we said we'd see where living together took us, and I think I know where it's taking us, at least where I hope it is." "Mara, let me finish. I'm not proposing. That's your job, when and if you're ready, but I am saying that I can see forever with you, with Lily. I can see us building a real family, making this official in every way that matters." She paused. "I just wanted you to know that, so you know where my head is, what I'm hoping for." Ethan set down his coffee cup and pulled her close. "I can see it too. Have been seeing it for months, actually. I just didn't want to rush you." "I don't feel rushed. I feel ready." "Then I should probably tell you that I've been carrying around a ring for the past 3 weeks, trying to figure out the right moment to use it." Mara pulled back to look at him, eyes wide. "You have a ring?" "In my sock drawer, which is probably not the most romantic place to keep it, but I couldn't think of anywhere Lily wouldn't accidentally find it." "Can I see it?" Ethan laughed. "That kind of defeats the purpose of waiting for the right moment." "I don't need a moment. I just need you, asking me a question I already know my answer to." They stood there in their living room, Lily's laughter drifting in from outside, and Ethan realized she was right. There was no perfect moment, no magical convergence of circumstances that would make the question easier or the answer more certain. There was just this: two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way, who'd survived the test that should have broken them, who were ready to choose each other for the rest of their lives. "Stay here," Ethan said. He went to the bedroom, retrieved the small velvet box from its hiding place among his winter socks, and returned to find Mara exactly where he'd left her, hands pressed to her mouth, eyes bright with anticipation. Ethan knelt on their living room floor, in sweatpants and a faded college t-shirt, holding a ring he'd agonized over for weeks. "I had a whole speech planned," he said, "about how you walked into my life through the wrong door, about how the best things are the ones we never planned for, about how you've made me believe in second chances and new beginnings." "That's a pretty good speech," Mara said, her voice thick with emotion. "But standing here now, all of that feels too complicated, so I'm just going to ask the simple question. Marlene, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me and Lily, with all the chaos and complications and beautiful imperfection that comes with it?" "Yes." The word came out somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "Yes, absolutely yes." Ethan slid the ring onto her finger, a simple band with 3 small stones, elegant without being ostentatious, exactly her style. She held up her hand, admiring it, then pulled him to his feet and kissed him with enough force that they both stumbled backward. Outside, Lily had apparently tired of snow angels because she came barreling through the door, cheeks flushed with cold, ready to demand hot chocolate. She stopped short when she saw them, taking in Ethan's expression and Mara's tears and the ring catching the winter light. "Did you finally ask her?" Lily demanded. "You knew?" Ethan asked. "Dad, I've known you had a ring for like a month. You're not as sneaky as you think." She turned to Mara. "Did you say yes?" "I said yes," Lily cheered, running over to throw her arms around both of them. "Finally! I thought you were never going to do it." They spent the rest of the day celebrating quietly, just the 3 of them. Hot chocolate and Christmas cookies, planning a wedding that was still months away, calling family members to share the news. Ethan's parents were delighted, having adored Mara since that chaotic Christmas a year ago. Mara's brother made jokes about shotgun weddings and demanded to walk her down the aisle. Even Rebecca called, having heard the news from Lily during their nightly check-in. "I'm happy for you," she said, and she sounded like she meant it. "Truly, you deserve this." "Thank you. That means a lot." Take care of each other, and take care of my daughter. Always. The wedding planning happened in fits and starts over the winter months, squeezed between work and parenting and the daily logistics of life. They decided on May, a spring wedding in Ethan's parents' backyard, small and intimate with just family and close friends. Lily appointed herself the unofficial wedding coordinator, offering opinions on everything from flowers to music to whether they should have a chocolate fountain at the reception. Some of her suggestions were practical, others wildly impractical, but Ethan and Mara listened to all of them, incorporating what made sense and gently redirecting what didn't. "Can I be the flower girl, Miss?" Lily asked one evening in February. "We were actually hoping you'd be something more than that," Mara said. "We want you to stand with us. You're not just witnessing this wedding, you're part of what's being created. So we thought you could stand between us, hold both our hands, be there when we make our promises to each other." Lily's eyes went wide. "Really? I've never heard of that before." "Because it's not traditional," Ethan explained, "but neither is our family. We're building something new, something that works for us specifically." "I like that." Lily thought for a moment. "Can I still throw flowers, though? I've always wanted to throw flowers." They compromised on letting her toss a handful of petals before taking her place between them for the ceremony itself. It was one of 100 small negotiations that went into planning a wedding that reflected who they actually were rather than what tradition dictated they should be. March brought Mara's 30th birthday and a milestone for her business. Her assistant became a full partner, and they rebranded as Lane and Associates. The firm was profitable, growing, earning a reputation for thoughtful work that actually delivered results. Mara still worked long hours sometimes, but she'd gotten better at setting boundaries, at protecting time for family and relationship. They celebrated her birthday with a surprise party that Ethan and Lily had been planning for weeks. Friends from work, from Mara's college days, even Jenna, who'd inadvertently started this whole story with that wrong address text. They crammed into the apartment, spilling out onto the balcony despite the lingering cold, toasting to Mara and her successes and the life she'd built. Late in the evening, after most guests had left, Jenna pulled Ethan aside. "I can't believe my terrible directions led to all this," she said, gesturing around the apartment, at Mara laughing with the remaining friends. "If I'd given her the right address that night, none of this would have happened." "Maybe it would have happened differently," Ethan said. "Or maybe you're right, and one small mistake created all of this. Either way, I'm grateful for the mistake." "Oh, she's happy. I've never seen her this happy." "She makes me happy too, makes Lily happy. It's a good fit." Jenna smiled. "The best ones usually are. The ones that feel like they just fit. Like they were always meant to happen even when the circumstances were completely absurd." As April arrived and the wedding drew closer, Ethan found himself thinking more about that night. About the sound of running water in an empty house and the terror that had preceded the wonder. How close he'd come to calling the police instead of knocking on the bathroom door. How easily Mara could have fled in embarrassment instead of staying to explain. How many tiny choices had aligned to bring them to this point. Life felt less like a carefully constructed plan and more like a series of unexpected moments that added up to something meaningful. All his attempts at control, at creating perfect stability for Lily, had given him structure but not joy. It had taken chaos, beautiful, messy, accidental chaos, to show him what he'd been missing. The night before the wedding, Ethan couldn't sleep. He found Lily in her room, also awake, staring at the ceiling. "Can't sleep either?" he asked from the doorway. "Too excited. Tomorrow Mara officially becomes part of our family." Ethan sat on the edge of her bed. "She's already part of our family. Tomorrow just makes it official." "I know, but it still feels big." Lily rolled onto her side to face him. "Dad, are you scared?" "A little, but the good kind of scared, the kind that means something important is happening." "I'm not scared at all. I think this is exactly right." Her certainty humbled him. At 9 years old, Lily had more faith in the future than he did at 36. Maybe that was the gift of childhood, or maybe she just saw more clearly without all the baggage of past failures clouding her vision. "Your mom's getting married in 2 weeks, Ethan said. "How do you feel about that?" "Good. David's nice, and it means she'll be happy, which means she'll be less worried about me, which means I'll have more freedom to do what I want." Lily grinned. I've thought this through very strategically. Ethan laughed. You're too smart for your own good. I get it from you. Your mom might disagree with that. She might, but she'd be wrong. Lily sat up, suddenly serious. I'm glad you found Mara. I'm glad she accidentally broke into our house. It was the best accident that ever happened to us. I think so too, sweetheart. The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, the kind of May morning that makes you believe in fresh starts and new beginnings. Ethan's parents' backyard had been transformed with simple decorations. White chairs arranged in rows, flowers everywhere, fairy lights strung through the trees for when evening came. Ethan stood under an arch of woven branches, watching guests arrive and take their seats. His parents? Mara's family from Nebraska, Rebecca and David sitting together looking genuinely happy, colleagues and friends who'd watched this relationship develop from its bizarre beginning to this moment. Then the music started, and Mara appeared. She'd chosen a simple dress, cream-colored and flowing, with her hair loose around her shoulders. She walked down the makeshift aisle alone, having decided she didn't need anyone to give her away because she was choosing this of her own free will, fully herself, not property being transferred from one person to another. She reached the arch, took Ethan's hand, and they both turned to where Lily stood waiting, dressed in lavender with a basket of flower petals she'd already started tossing, even though it wasn't quite time yet. The three of them stood together while the officiant, one of Ethan's colleagues from school, spoke about family and choice and the different forms love takes. Then it was time for the vows. Ethan went first, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. Mara, you walked into my life through a bathroom door, and nothing has been the same since. You've challenged me to be braver, to take risks, to believe that the best things in life are the ones we never plan for. You've loved my daughter like she was your own, and you've loved me even when I was too scared to fully love you back. Today I'm choosing you, not just for now, but for every tomorrow we get. I promise to show up, to do the work, to choose us even when it's hard. I promise to support your dreams while building our shared ones. I promise to be the partner you deserve, the father Lily needs, and the man I want to be. I love you, and I'm so grateful that you used the wrong key on the wrong door and gave me the chance to love you. There wasn't a dry eye in the audience by the time he finished. Mara wiped at her own tears before beginning her vows. Ethan, you saved me that night in ways you didn't even know. I was lost, scared, desperate to prove I could make it in a new city. And you responded to my chaos with kindness. You gave me your shower, your shirt, your trust when I deserved none of those things. In the months since, you've given me so much more, your heart, your home, your daughter, your belief in our future. Today I'm promising to honor those gifts by being the best partner I can be. I promise to communicate even when it's uncomfortable, to make time even when work is demanding, to choose us over everything except our daughter's well-being. I promise to keep making you laugh, to challenge you when you're being too cautious, and to be your safe place when the world gets hard. I love you, and I love Lily, and I promise to spend the rest of my life proving that this accident was actually destiny. Then they both turned to Lily, including her in the promises they were making. Lily, Ethan said, I promise to always be your dad first, to protect you and support you and embarrass you at all the appropriate moments. Mara knelt down to Lily's level. And I promise to never try to replace your mom, but to be another person who loves you unconditionally, who celebrates your victories and comforts you in your losses, who will always be here for you no matter what. Lily, who'd been coached on this moment, pulled out a piece of paper she'd written herself. I promise to remember that you guys need time alone sometimes, even though that's boring for me. I promise to tell you when I'm worried or sad instead of keeping it inside. And I promise to help take care of whatever brothers or sisters might come along, even though babies are kind of gross. She looked up. Did I do it right? The audience erupted in laughter and applause. Ethan and Mara both hugged her, and the officiant declared them a family, not husband and wife, not yet, that came after the ring exchange, but a family unit, 3 people choosing to belong to each other. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. Rings exchanged, tears shed, the kiss that sealed promises made in front of everyone who mattered. When they finally walked back down the aisle, it was as 3, Ethan and Mara hand in hand, Lily between them, all of them grinning like this was the best day of their lives. Because it was. The reception was exactly what they'd hoped for, Food and music and dancing, Lily eating too much cake and staying up past her bedtime, friends and family mixing and celebrating. Rebecca came over at one point to hug Mara, welcoming her officially into the complicated extended family they'd all created. "Take care of them," she said quietly. "I will. I promise." As evening fell and the fairy lights came on, Ethan found a quiet moment to stand back and observe. His parents dancing together after 40 years of marriage, Mara's brother teaching Lily some ridiculous dance move, Mara herself, radiant in the soft light, laughing at something Jenna was saying. His father appeared beside him, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. He offered one to Ethan. "You did good, son." "Thanks, Dad." "I mean it. That's a special woman you found. Or who found you, depending on how you look at it. She walked into my bathroom by accident and changed everything." His father chuckled. "The best stories always start with some variation of by accident. Your mother and I met because she rear-ended my car. 23 years old, terrified she'd have to pay for the damage, and I fell in love with her right there in that parking lot while we exchanged insurance information. You never told me that. Some stories you save for the right moment." His father clinked his glass against Ethan's. "To accidents that change our lives for the better." "To accidents," Ethan echoed. Later, much later, after the guests had gone home and Lily had finally crashed on the couch in an exhausted heap, Ethan and Mara stood in the quiet backyard looking at the remnants of their celebration. "We did it," Mara said, leaning against him. "We did. How do you feel?" "Married, in the best possible way." She turned to face him. "Do you remember what you said that first night, when I was freaking out in your bathroom? I told you to breathe. Before that, you said we'd figure it out like reasonable adults, and we did. Through every complication, every crisis, every moment when it would have been easier to give up, we figured it out." Ethan kissed her forehead. "We're pretty good at figuring things out together. The best." They stood there in the darkness, fairy lights twinkling above them, beginning a marriage that had started with the most unlikely of meetings. In the morning, they'd fly to the small beach resort where they were spending their honeymoon, just the 2 of them for 1 week before returning to Lily and real life. But for now, there was just this: peace and contentment and the absolute certainty that they'd chosen right. Inside the house, Lily stirred on the couch, mumbling something about cake in her sleep. The sound made them both smile. "Ready to go inside?" Mara asked. "In a minute. I want to remember this. All of it." So they stayed a little longer, holding each other while the spring night settled around them, grateful for wrong addresses and unlocked doors, and every beautiful accident that had led them here. 1 year later, almost to the day, Ethan stood in that same bathroom where it had all begun. The house on Maple Ridge Drive stood empty now. The tenants had moved out last month, and he and Mara had decided to move back in, to raise their family in the house that had witnessed the beginning of their story. He'd spent the afternoon making preparations, transforming the bathroom with candles and flowers, creating something beautiful in the space where fear had once lived. When Mara arrived, lured home early from work under false pretenses, he led her upstairs, his hand over her eyes. "What is this?" She laughed. "What are you doing?" "Bringing everything full circle." He removed his hand, and she gasped. The bathroom glowed with candlelight, flowers everywhere, and in the center a small wrapped box sitting on the counter. "Ethan, what?" "Open it." Inside was a key, polished and new, attached to a keychain that said home. "I'm giving you a key to this house," he said. "The right key this time, not a spare from under the mat. A key that belongs to you because you belong here, with me and Lily and whatever else our future holds." Mara's eyes filled with tears. "You sentimental fool," says the woman crying in a bathroom. She laughed through the tears, then kissed him, and everything came full circle. The fear transformed into love, the accident revealed as destiny, the wrong door opening onto exactly the right life. Outside, Lily was arriving home from school, her voice calling through the house. They had dinner to make, homework to supervise, the mundane, beautiful work of family life stretching ahead of them. But first, this moment. This perfect moment. in an ordinary bathroom that had become extraordinary, where everything had begun and everything was still beginning, one choice at a time, one day at a time, forever. "Welcome home," Ethan whispered. "I've been home since the day I accidentally walked through your door," Mara whispered back. "I just didn't know it yet." And in the end, that was the truth of it. Sometimes the wrong door leads exactly where you're meant to be. Sometimes a stranger becomes family. Sometimes fear transforms into courage, and accidents reveal themselves as grace. Sometimes love just finds a way.